Meet Bob. Bob has just been diagnosed with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and like you, Bob wonders what COPD really is. So let's find out. COPD can be defined as pathologic lung changes that result from bronchitis and/or emphysema, leading to long-term airway obstruction, subsequent reduction of airflow into the lungs, and impaired gas exchange. Due to the gradual progression of the disease, its prevalence increases with age. According to a 2014 Australian Institute of Health and Welfare report, 1 in 20 Australians aged over 45 were said to have COPD, an estimated 450,000 people. This report further highlighted COPD as the fifth leading cause of death among Australians in 2016, with 70% of these deaths occurring in individuals aged 75 and over. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics 2013, there is no significant difference between the prevalence of COPD in males and females. This report did, however, highlight that the prevalence of COPD among Indigenous Australians across all age groups is 2.5 times higher than that of non-Indigenous Australians. Cigarette smoking has been implicated as the principal cause of COPD, with an estimated 70% of COPD deaths attributed to smoking. Further contributing factors to COPD include occupational exposure to dusts, fumes and gases, air pollution, and frequent lower respiratory infections. An uncommon genetic disorder called antitrypsin deficiency can also be linked to COPD in around 1 to 3% of all cases. In normal functioning lungs, air flows through the respiratory tree and oxygen is exchanged for carbon dioxide at the terminal units called alveoli. This is facilitated by adequate alveolar surface area, which functions to maintain an appropriate ventilation-perfusion ratio. As mentioned earlier, COPD typically includes components of both chronic bronchitis and emphysema. Through two distinctively different mechanisms, these disorders cause an increase in airway resistance and impaired gas exchange. Chronic bronchitis is characterized by hypersecretion of mucus by the bronchioles. Inhaled irritants such as smoke from cigarettes lead to a chronic inflammatory process which results in an increase in the number of mucus-secreting goblet cells and hypertrophy of mucus glands in the bronchioles. Resultantly, thick and tenacious mucus is produced, which gives rise to the productive cough common in chronic bronchitis. Ciliary function is also impaired by inhaled irritants, which adversely influences mucosal clearance. This causes obstruction of the airway, typically leading to intermittent wheezing and dyspnea. The lungs' defense mechanisms are therefore compromised, which increases the susceptibility to pulmonary infection, exacerbating the progression of the disease. Furthermore, airway obstruction resulting in ventilation-perfusion mismatch is often associated with alveolar hypoxia and hypercapnia. Hypercapnia or increased CO2 leads to respiratory acidosis and polycythemia, which is an increase in the production of hemoglobin to compensate for this change. Both respiratory acidosis and polycythemia contribute to another distinguishable symptom of bronchitis, cyanosis. Emphysema is characterized by elastic fiber breakdown within the alveoli and loss of alveolar wall integrity. Inhalation of irritants such as cigarette smoke causes infiltration of airway epithelium by inflammatory cells. This results in the secretion of protease and cytokines in alveolar and bronchial walls by activated macrophages. This imbalance between proteases and antiproteases causes destruction of the alveolar septum, resulting in a reduction in an alveolar surface area, as well as destruction of sections of the pulmonary capillary bed. In turn, both these processes produce a ventilation-perfusion deficit. More specifically, a protease called elastase is secreted by neutrophils within the epithelial tissue, which actively targets elastic fibers in the alveoli as well as the bronchi, resulting in impaired elastic recoil of the respiratory airways. Subsequently, due to impaired elastic recoil of the alveoli, there is an increase in residual volume as well as work required for breathing, that leads to dyspnea and cachexia. Loss of alveolar wall integrity coupled with diminished bronchial capability causes an air trapping effect, as part of each inspiration becomes trapped in the alveoli. As air exchange becomes difficult and air trapping continues, the lungs will become hyperinflated. This results in the formation of abnormal permanent enlargement of airways, leading to one of the clinical signs of emphysema, barrel chest. In summary, there are common symptoms in both chronic bronchitis and emphysema, including prolonged expiration, wheezing, dyspnea, and hyperventilation. Specifically, the classic symptom of chronic bronchitis is a productive cough, while cyanosis and polycythemia may also be present. For emphysema, the defining symptom is barrel chest, whilst cachexia is also common. Like Bob, I now hope you understand the etiological, pathophysiological, and symptomatic features of COPD.